Hi everyone, I'm Annie and welcome back to Album Unknown. As you can see, my background is a little different for this video as my poster wall currently has all of the posters falling down constantly and I'm getting sick and tired of putting them back up. So until I figure out a better solution for that, we have the fantastic, the talented, the wonderful Mr. Michael Wazowski. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump into our 7 albums for the week, all picked from my Album a Day project from 2022. Alright folks, our first album for this week is Stranger in the Alps by Phoebe Bridgers. It has 11 songs coming in at about 44 minutes and 19 seconds. It was released on September 22nd, 2017 by Dead Oceans. So this is a sad girl album, to say the least. It is a sad girl album through and through, but you don't have to be a girl to listen to it to be sad. You can be anybody and you will still feel sad. It doesn't matter. So one of the most interesting things about the album is the title of the album. It actually comes from a line in the movie The Big Lebowski, which the original line is, "Do you see what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass?" Now that doesn't sound like the title of this album, now does it? That's a bit more graphic. Well, that's because the line from the TV edited version is, "Do you see what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps?" Obviously, that first one could not go on TV, so it was changed to "Find a Stranger in the Alps," and Phoebe Bridgers liked that so much and thought it was very funny, and she decided that it was mysterious enough to make for the album title. As for the themes of this album, it's kind of about the solidarity that you can find in loneliness, which sounds strange because if you're lonely, you don't really think of having other people. But with this album and with this music, it helps you find that there are other people who feel the same things you do, who understand what you're going through, and it helps you relate to them. And that's what Phoebe Bridgers wanted to do with this album, is just kind of put her feelings out there and let other people know who are going through the same things, like, hey, you're not alone. We all feel this way. It's the same for everybody. And just to hit home the sad girl vibes that we're getting here, Phoebe said that she took a lot of inspiration from the music of Elliott Smith and Conor Oberst, which, if you know either of those artists, you know they are both very depressing and very sad as well. But with that, my favorite song off of this album is the song Funeral. Phoebe starts it out by saying how she's talking to the father of someone who had passed away, and the person who had passed away was only a year older than her, and she was now performing at their funeral. So that gives you a great intro into the vibes we're getting from this song. Overall, for the album though, like I said, it's very sad, so if you're looking for something more upbeat and that you want to have a good time to, this probably would not be it. This is for when it's 3 a.m. and you're driving to McDonald's and crying alone in your car. Not that I've ever done that. Don't ask me any questions. Alright, next we are moving on to an 80s staple. We are moving on to the album Bad by Michael Jackson. It has 11 songs coming in at about 48 minutes and 10 seconds. It was released on August 31st, 1987 by Epic Records. Now we got a lot of genres in this album. We've got pop, we've got rock, we've got funk, R&B, dance, soul, and hard rock, because the regular rock just wasn't enough. Some of the features included on here are Sita Garrett, Stevie Wonder, and Letta Mbulu. When this album debuted, to no one's surprise, it debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Albums charts, which, as I said, not a shocker, as 5 years previously, Michael Jackson had released the album Thriller, and everyone was kind of waiting to see what he was gonna do to follow up what's considered one of the greatest albums of all time. Just to hit home how successful this album was, 7 of the songs charted in the Billboard 100, and 5 of those songs went to number 1. In addition to that, it was the best-selling album of not only 1987, but also 1998, and by 1991, it had become the second best-selling album of all time, second only to his previous release, Thriller. So this album, with all its great successes, has also been credited with defining the sound of the 1980s and setting the standard for innovation in music videos. If you've seen any of the music videos from the songs off of this album, you definitely know what I'm talking about. They're very memorable. Most specifically, I remember the Bad music video, and then obviously Weird Al's version of it, Fat, in which he did a fantastic recreation. As most of us know, Michael Jackson liked to have ultimate control over his music and what he was producing. After so many years of being with the Jackson 5 and his dad was kind of controlling everything, for his career he wanted to have as much control as possible. So for this album, he wrote 9 out of the 11 songs, and in a quote from the producer Quincy Jones, who's known as a music powerhouse, he describes how they would spend countless hours in the studio. He said that they used to stay up for 5 days and nights with no sleep when they were on a roll, and that there were second engineers being wheeled out on stretchers. Not only that he was smoking 180 cigarettes a day when they were making this album. That just shows you how much pressure and how much stress was on them, somewhat by Michael, somewhat by the record company, as he was continuously missing deadlines because he kept pushing things back to make the songs better and to make them exactly how he wanted them. And in addition to that, in the 5 years between Thriller and Bad's release, Michael was surrounded in a whole lot of controversy that I don't even have time to get into. So I'll leave you with this. If you've never listened to this album, or you've never listened to it all the way through, I think it is a good idea to do so, as it has been set as not only like one of the defining albums of the 1900s, but like of all time. So do yourself a favor, give it a listen. You probably know like most of the songs because almost half of them were #1 hits at one point, so they're pretty well known, but give the other ones a listen. And in addition to that, my favorite song off of this album would be Man in the Mirror. Now I know it's cheesy and it's kind of a basic choice, but this song was one of the first songs I ever remember learning. I remember looking up the lyrics on YouTube because I wanted to be able to sing it, and then I would go in my parents' garage and I would practice singing it all by myself because I wanted to be a pop star and I thought I was gonna go on American Idol, and that was the song I wanted to sing. And I still love it. It's still a very good song. I highly recommend taking a listen to that song and this album. Alright, our next album is Rainbow by Kesha. It has 14 songs, coming in at about 48 minutes and 44 seconds. It was released on August 11th, 2017 by Kemosabe and RCA Records. The genres included in it are pop rock, glam rock, neo-soul, and pop country. Some of the features on it include Dolly Parton, Eagles of Death Metal, and Dap King's Horns. And of course, when it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. Now, some people would not have expected a Kesha album to debut at #1. In the years leading up to this, Kesha had been involved in a highly publicized legal battle with the producer Dr. Luke after she accused him of sexually, emotionally, and physically abusing her. And because of all of these allegations and all of the legal proceedings and everything that went along with it, she did not want to produce music with him, but as part of her contract, she was being forced to do so. Hence why there was such a big gap between this album and the one she had released prior to that. She actually began working on the album in 2014 while she was undergoing treatment for an eating disorder, and she said that she had to have her friend sneak her in like this little toy keyboard so she could write music while she was in there, because she wasn't allowed to have anything while she was there. Kesha said that a lot of the music off this album was taken from a lot of different places and a lot of different artists. Some of those artists being Iggy Pop, T-Rex, Dolly Parton, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, James Brown, and Sweet. As for the themes of this album, it is centered around self-empowerment and a lot of feminist ideals, and basically just like taking your life and making it better for yourself. Not relying on other people, not relying on men specifically for this album, and just doing what you want to do with your life. The title of the album is inspired by all of the bright colors that Kesha says bring hope into life, and she actually has quite a few rainbow tattoos, which also contributed. My favorite song off of this album is the song Woman. I believe it was the first single that was released from this album, and when I heard it, I was like, oh hell yeah. Kesha is back and she is not messing around. It is so much different from all the stuff that she was releasing in like the early or like the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's just way different from all of that, and I just was so excited that she was getting her moment to shine, because a lot of people, I think, didn't take her seriously as an artist because most of her songs from the late 2000s, early 2010s were very like party centric. It was like the grungy party girl vibe that was kind of the thing back then, and it was good. It's fun, good music, but it wasn't like a serious musician necessarily. And not to discredit her in any way, because most of that was other people controlling what she was putting out. She didn't really ever want to be putting out that kind of stuff, and she was always discouraged from doing anything different. So seeing this album come out and just have such a strong message, especially after all the things that she had been through in the past years, it was just so amazing and so inspiring to see. And if you couldn't tell, I really liked it. There's a lot of beautiful, inspiring songs on this, but then there's also the ones that are like the party anthems. Like you want to play those with your friends in the car and just scream them at the top of your lungs. Those kinds of songs. Apparently I'm very focused on driving in songs today. Yeah, I guess it's because I listen to a lot of music in my car. I don't know, but neither here nor there. Check this album out. If you haven't heard it yet, I think you will probably really like it. I wouldn't say every song is super memorable, but overall just a very, very inspiring album from an artist who has been through a lot. Alright, and our next album is The Divine Feminine by Mac Miller. It is 10 songs coming in at 52 minutes and 37 seconds. It was released on September 16th, 2016 by Remember Music and Warner Brothers. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. There are features on here from Anderson .Paak, Ariana Grande, Ty Dolla $ign, Bilal, CeeLo Green, Kendrick Lamar, and Nijomza. Billboard describes this album as a celebration of women and an exploration of love. And in that same article, Mac Miller was talking to them and explaining how he saw this as an opportunity to face his fears creatively and make something that he'd never made before. In another article that he did with Vogue, he was talking about the album and things going on in his life, and he gave this quote that I think just really sums up who Mac was as a person. He said, "I think a lot of times people just want to be cool, and to be in love is not cool. But I think it's the coolest. I think love is the coolest thing there is." And that just breaks my freaking heart every time I hear that and I look at it. I'm just like, oh, Mac, no. Because it just shows you like how in love with Ariana Grande he was at this time, and just thinking about how much love he had in his heart, and so much, like, he had so much left to do and give to the world. It's just, oh, ouchie. But as far as the album goes and the music on it, it's very different from anything Mac had released previously. It's exactly what they said it is. It is a celebration of women and an exploration of love. There is some very, very heartfelt, sweet songs, but then there's also the ones that are like constantly played at parties. You know, Dang, which also happens to be my favorite song, is the one that features Anderson .Paak. It is just so catchy, and it's just a groove, it's just a vibe. You can listen to it and it just will automatically like boost your mood. But yeah, I definitely appreciated Mac's prior work to this album. I appreciate all the work he'd done since, but this was kind of where his career had switched, and he stopped doing like the I'm just a white kid from Pittsburgh trying to make it kind of thing, and started really delving into his creative side and using his talents to make music that was meaningful to him. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that one. Okay, now we're going to take a big turn here, and our next album is 1000 Gecs by 100 Gecs. There are 10 songs, coming in at 23 minutes and 5 seconds. It was released on May 31st, 2019 by Dog Show Records. Now, this album is considered hyperpop by most people. However, there are many subgenres that others would consider it to be, including post-dubstep, indie pop, pop punk, trance, chiptune, happy hardcore, hip-hop, synth-pop, ska, and Europop. Now, the writers and band members of 100 Gecs are Dylan Brady and Laura Less, and this album that is definable and undefinable in so many ways was kind of exactly their goal. They believe that labeling genres is not super important, and they are fans of music in general, so they kind of made this album a best of compilation of all of their favorite genres and all of the types of music they like. And another fun fact, the tree that is on the cover of the album is now a historical landmark on Google Maps, thanks to the wonderful fans of 100 Gecs. Now, I have re-listened to this album 3 times now, and I still don't really know how I feel about it. I don't hate it, I don't think. I don't love it. I'm still trying to figure out where I fall with it. It is very different, and that was their goal, so they definitely achieved that. When I first heard the song Money Machine off of this album, I legitimately thought that they were just like a teen meme band, just like fucking around and making music, and then they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they had a whole album, and I was like, okay, this is strange. This is weird. I still don't know how I feel about it. I guess my favorite song off of it would be Hand Crushed by a Mallet. I think I like that one the best. I have no clue. I think that everyone should listen to it to determine their own opinions, no matter what you think about hyperpop or 100 Gecs specifically. You just kind of have to experience it for yourself, and let me know if you form an actual opinion about it, because I'm still trying to figure out mine. I know I don't hate it. I know I don't dislike it, but I still don't know really where I fall with it. And with yet another big switch, we are going to Automatic for the People by R.E.M. It has 12 songs, coming in at about 48 minutes and 52 seconds. It was released on October 5th, 1992 by Warner Brothers Records, and it reached number 2 on the Billboard 200. Some of the main themes throughout the album are mourning, mortality, loss, and nostalgia. So obviously a very heavy album, but the title, not so much. The title actually refers to a grocery store chain in Athens, Georgia called Weaver D's Delicious Fine Foods, which also uses this as their slogan. What it means for a grocery store chain, I have no idea, but hey, if it works for R.E.M, I guess it works for Weaver D's Delicious Fine Foods as well. So Rolling Stone considers this to be one of their top albums of the 1990s, and I can see why. One of the most interesting things that I found out when I was doing research was the demos for a lot of the songs on this album were originally recorded without the lead singer, and all of the other band members had actually swapped instruments from what they had typically play, so they picked up a new one and just did that for the demos. And band member Michael Stipe describes the demos as, quote, pretty fucking weird, and I can imagine they would be. Another thing that I found interesting was that John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin actually helped arrange the strings for 4 different songs on the album. Another thing that I found was the song that is actually my favorite off of this album, Man on the Moon, was a tribute to the late comedian Andy Kaufman. And if you listen to this song, you'll definitely hear a lot of the references to him and to his characters and his personalities, things like that. Anyways, the album, Automatic for the People. I really enjoyed it. It's an R.E.M. album. If you like R.E.M., you'll like it. It's probably one of their most popular albums as well. Definitely very heavily focused on kind of what they said before. It's an early 90s rock album, so if you're into any of those other types of bands, you'll probably like this one as well. I always like to recommend giving the full album a listen to, because before last year I was always just very much of a song person, so I would if I heard a song and I liked it, I would listen to that, but then I never really got into any of the other songs from albums, and it kind of takes away your experience in some ways, or at least the experience that the artist wants you to have, if you don't always listen to those albums all the way through, so you can kind of get the message that they're trying to portray. So there's that on that. Alrighty, our final album for the week is Come Fly With Me by Frank Sinatra. It is 15 songs, coming in at about 45 minutes and 47 seconds. It was released on January 6th, 1958 by Capitol Records. Going along with the theme of our chart-topping albums this week, it reached #1 on the Billboard Albums charts in its second week of release. This album was also nominated for Grammy of the Year at the inaugural Grammy Awards, and was later inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2004. The theme of the album is travel and exploring exotic locations, which, if you look at the song titles from this album, makes a lot of sense, as all of the songs except for one, which is the title track of the album, all reference a different place or location throughout the world. Now, in the 1950s, how could you ever think there would be any controversies whatsoever? But somehow there was one with this album. Now, there was a song on the album called On the Road to Mandalay, which was based on the Rudyard Kipling poem called Mandalay. But Rudyard Kipling's family was upset with this rendition, so it was pulled from the first few releases of this album. Now, there's plenty of other controversies with Frank Sinatra that we could get into, but honestly, I don't really care enough. Mafia, organized crime, the Kennedys, Marilyn Monroe. Look into it, it's pretty interesting, but it doesn't relate to the album, so I'm not going to worry about it. But my favorite song from this album is actually the title track. Very basic choice again, I know, but it is probably the most memorable one from this album. Come Fly With Me. Most people have heard it, if not like it. If you like swing music, you're gonna like this album, okay? It's a Frank Sinatra album. You can't get more quintessential 1950s than this, really, especially 1950s white music. You cannot get anything closer than a Frank Sinatra album. If you don't like swing, you're not gonna like it. I don't know what to tell you. But while it's not my favorite genre, I do enjoy just putting it on as background music, or if I'm cooking, having it play. It's always a nice experience. So there's my recommendation for that. And with that, we have reached the end of our 7 albums for this week. If you like those albums, if you hate those albums, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for new suggestions for music and stuff, so if you have any of those, let me know. If you like it, subscribe, yada yada yada, easy stuff. But with that, I am all out of things to say, except for thank you. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a great day.